All right, so Nigeria has waited more than 2 years for this moment. 2 years. And after leaving key embassies without leadership since taking office, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has finally released his full ambassadorial list. 35 names in total, including 32 fresh nominees and an earlier batch of 3. Now, this looks like a routine diplomatic exercise, but in reality, it has ignited one of the most heated debates of his presidency. In 2 separate letters to Senate President Godswill Akpabio, the president asked the Senate to expeditiously confirm 15 career diplomats and 17 non-career nominees. The list cuts across the country: former governors, former ministers, ex-first ladies, senators, commissioners, business figures, and a handful of long-serving foreign service professionals. These nominees are expected to be posted to strategic partners. We are talking about countries like China, India, South Korea, Canada, Mexico, UAE, Qatar, South Africa, you name it, even Kenya, and to multilateral missions at the United Nations, UNESCO, and the African Union. Do you know what this means? This means that for more than 2 years, Nigeria has no ambassador anywhere in the world. No serious country will think that diplomacy is a side note, but Nigeria being what it is, they can play politics with it. But here is where it gets really interesting. It is the identity of some of these non-career nominees that has triggered public outrage. Critics are pointing to names like former INEC chairman Mahmood Yakubu. You remember that guy? The guy who conducted the infamous 2023 election, and should I remind you, remains heavily disputed. That election is still heavily disputed, and it just happens to be that the election is the same election that produced the president that appointed him this ambassador position. Connect the dots, there was no fair election in 2023. And then another name that is making a lot of people really angry is this former presidential candidate called Reno Omokri, known more for partisan online battles than diplomacy. They are arguing that those who contributed to Nigeria's current crisis are now being seen as the country's image makers abroad. Critics are describing this list as, and I am quoting here, retirement home for political boys and election riggers. They are calling it less an ambassadorial list and more like INEC and APC reward ceremony on diplomatic passport. Others say it confirms a deeper pattern, a system that constantly rewards alleged misdeeds, failed governance, and sycophancy, while sidelining merit, technocrats, and professionals in foreign policy. So in this episode, we are going to unpack the names, the timing, and the politics behind Tinubu's ambassadorial choices and ask a central question. Is this about representing Nigeria to the world, or is it about settling loyalists ahead of the 2027 general elections? Let's get into it. Nigeria waited more than 2 years for ambassadors, and when the list finally came out, it looks less like foreign policy and more like a political reward sheet. Here is what Nigerians are actually seeing on this list. Now, the basic facts are straightforward on the surface. President Tinubu sent 32 additional ambassadorial nominees to the Senate after an earlier submission of just 3 names. The split is former: 15 career diplomats and 17 non-career nominees. But that second group, that is where everything is going from bad to worse, because these non-career ambassadors include former governors, ex-ministers, former first ladies, political aides, business people, and controversial figures whose names immediately raise alarm bells across the country. Names like the notorious Reno Omokri, the controversial Mahmood Yakubu, the guy who conducted the controversial election that produced the current sitting president. Another name that is raising eyebrows is Femi Fani, former governor Okezie Ikpeazu, the guy that ran Abia State to the ground all household names, but for reasons that had nothing to do with diplomacy or international relations. And the timing here, it matters. Nigeria has faced 2 years of vacant ambassadorial positions across about 109 foreign missions. The country has dealt with international criticism over insecurity, kidnappings, poverty, and government failures. In that context, Nigeria's ambassadorial list should have been a chance to reset, a chance to send messages of competence, professionalism, and democratic health to the watching world. Instead, what Nigerians are seeing is something entirely different. The overwhelming majority of non-career nominees are political figures who need somewhere to go, somewhere to be protected, and somewhere to stay relevant. And as Nigerians look through the names one by one, the conversation shifted dramatically from who Tinubu picked to what exactly this list was being used to settle. From ex-governors to party attack dogs and social media warriors, Tinubu's ambassadorial list reads like a roll call of political survivors, not a short list of professional diplomats. The non-career nominees paint a clear picture. There is Reno Omokri, known to Nigerians as someone who spent years waging partisan battles online before this nomination. There is Mahmood Yakubu, the controversial figure who ran the 2023 presidential election. There is Femi Fani-Kayode, the ex-aviation minister with a long history of legal battles and corruption allegations that courts have mostly dismissed. And then there are the ex-governors, Ifeanyi Ugwuanyi from Enugu State and Okbazo from Abia State, both of whom left office amid accusations of mismanagement and diverted funds. The pattern is, it is unavoidable at this point. Many of these people have already held powerful positions at home. They ran states, they managed billions in public funds, they led national institutions, and now they are being sent away from the spotlight, away from accountability, but still within the system's protection. The criticism from Nigerians has been swift and, for lack of a better word, it has been merciless. People are calling this a retirement home for political boys and election riggers. Others are saying this is not an ambassadorial list. It is an INEC and APC reward ceremony with diplomatic passports attached. The message is clear. Merit is officially dead in Nigeria. Loyalty is what matters. What Nigerians expected was different. They expected seasoned diplomats who understand international law, foreign policy, multilateral negotiations, and how to rebuild Nigeria's badly damaged global image. Instead, we got what looks like a re-election strategy wearing a diplomatic uniform. But here is the central contradiction, and this one cuts deeper than any other. How does the person who ran a highly disputed election end up being rewarded with an ambassadorial post in the very system that benefited his decisions? Professor Mahmood Yakubu supervised the 2023 election as INEC chairman. What followed was one of the most controversial in Nigeria's modern history. Opposition parties declared the vote rigged. International observers, including from the European Union, they flagged massive logistical failures, technical problems with result transmission, and a lack of transparency from INEC itself. The BBC investigation found evidence suggesting some results from Nigeria's presidential election may have been manipulated, particularly in Rivers State. Millions of Nigerians has already lost faith in the electoral system. One major survey even found that 78% of Nigerians, 78%, said they had little or no trust in INEC by the time Yakubu left office. The institution was in crisis. Public confidence has collapsed. Democracy itself felt compromised to many Nigerians. And now, barely 2 years after overseeing that process, this man, Yakubu, is being nominated as an ambassador. The message this sent is, it is staggering. Here is what the critics are saying. Yakubu was an election manager, not a diplomat. He knows nothing about foreign policy, international law, or multilateral negotiations. What he does know is how electoral system can be managed in certain directions. And now, he he is being sent abroad as Nigeria's official representative to the world. But deeper than the question of competency is the question of settlement. Is this a reward? Is this compensation? Is this a signal to the new INEC chairman and all future INEC chairmen that if they deliver for the ruling party, they too will get a comfortable ambassadorial posting? That is, among others, the fears that Nigerians are expressing right now regarding this controversial ambassadorial list. The same man many Nigerians know as a partisan online attack dog, or should I say social media warrior, may soon become the official face of Nigeria in a major Western capital. The contradiction is hard to miss. Reno Omokri was a presidential aide under Goodluck Jonathan. After Jonathan left office back in 2015, Omokri became what many see as a relentless social media warrior, attacking critics, praising allies, shifting positions as political winds change. Nigerians know him as someone who seems willing to say anything to remain relevant, to stay in the news, to stay connected to power. His reputation is fractured. People describe his work as that of a town crier and praise singer, someone paid to amplify messages rather than someone grounded in principle. His online presence has been described as contradictory and often self-serving, and yet Tinubu has nominated him as an ambassador. The contradiction is so stark that it has become a punchline. Nigerians are joking about it online. They are saying at least Reno Omokri will finally leave P2B alone since they have compensated him finally. And what makes this particularly troubling is the image problem Nigeria is already facing globally. The country battles persistent stereotypes about fraud, corruption, and dishonesty. People around the world have certain ideas about Nigerian governance, and now Nigeria is sending someone widely seen as a polarizing partisan voice to represent the country's interests abroad. Diplomacy requires discretion, calm judgment, and the ability to navigate nuance. Reno Omokri is known for the opposite. His nomination raises serious questions about whether this administration prioritizes the country's diplomatic standing or whether it's simply trying to place controversial figures out of sight while keeping them inside the system. From money laundering trials to battles over seized assets, some of the new image makers of Nigeria are stepping into diplomacy with heavy baggage. Fani Kayode is one of the most prominent names on the ambassadorial list. He was nominated for what many expect will be a significant Western posting. For years, Fani Kayode faced multiple investigations. As a former aviation minister, he was accused of moving sums of money through questionable channels. Cases allege financial misconduct and misuse of public funds. Court proceedings dragged on for nearly 18 years. Now, although the court ultimately discharged him on various counts and some cases were dismissed, the public memory they still remain. In a country already wounded by corruption allegations and institutional failure, sending someone whose legal and political history remains contentious, it sends a particular message: tolerance for impunity rather than accountability. Then there is Senator Jimoh Ibrahim, a businessman politician associated with debt dispute and asset seizure cases, and the ex-governors who both left office amid public doubt about their financial management. Buhari's administration was repeatedly accused of mishandling local government funds. In Abia State, Ibazu saw billions allocated to projects that reportedly never materialized, including a controversial airport project. Here is the core problem. An ambassador is supposed to be a frontline representative of the entire country. First line of defense for citizens abroad, the main person selling Nigeria's investment opportunities, security cooperation, and national reputation. An ambassador is supposed to be Nigeria's best face to the entire world. Instead, what the government is offering are people whose records at home raises eyebrows, people whose presence abroad is likely to dredge up old controversies rather than build new confidence. If Nigeria's own people doubt these choices, what respect can Nigeria expect from the nations that will host these ambassadors? Now, let me ask this critical question. Is Nigeria's foreign service still about foreign policy, or has it quietly become an extension of Tinubu's 2027 election strategy? The central thesis here is uncomfortable but unavoidable. This list looks less like a foreign service reform and more like a political settlement designed ahead of the next presidential cycle. Here is how this works in practice. Ambassadorial positions offer something valuable to political figures. They offer protection, they offer status, and they offer access to powerful global networks. They keep key political operators within the system, but outside of daily domestic scrutiny, where they can be questioned about their records. For Tinubu, sending these people abroad as ambassadors serves multiple purposes. It rewards people who were loyal during his election campaign and early administration. It moves potentially problematic figures out of the country. It keeps them available for future use in campaigns and political organizing. And it sends a signal to other political actors. Loyalty will be rewarded even if your record at home is mixed or controversial. The pattern across African continent is even concerning. Nigeria is supposed to be a model for Africa, a model for democracy, diplomacy, and leadership. When Nigeria is seen as rewarding disputed elections and political sycophancy with diplomatic power, it weakens Nigeria's moral authority across the continent. It sends a message that African institutions are not necessarily about merit or accountability, but about settling scores and protecting allies. What makes this particularly visible right now is the timing. The 2027 election is already beginning to take shape in the political system. Opposition movements are forming. Atiku Abubakar's bloc is looking for a running mate. P2B's supporters are organizing, and in this context, Tinubu is consolidating his base by rewarding those he intends to use in the coming election cycle. This is not about diplomacy. It's about succession planning and consolidation of power. A country that rewards alleged election riggers, sycophants, and failed politicians with diplomatic power is making a clear statement, not to its critics, but to its own children about what kind of country they are living in. Let me recap this. Nigeria appears to be at a moment where the highest levels of government are rewarding misdeeds, poor performance, and political loyalty. The ambassadors are more than names on a list. They are a signal of direction, because the quality of a country's ambassadors is an indication of the country's direction. This ambassadorial list is concrete evidence of a broader leadership crisis, because when a country consistently rewards those who oversee disputed elections, when it promotes those accused of financial mismanagement, when it elevates partisan voices above professional diplomats, it is writing a story about itself. And that story is saying something very dangerous. It says, no country on earth has prospered through a shambolic, corrupt leadership recruitment processes. What makes this matter for Africa is fundamental. Africa is watching. A Nigeria that turns its foreign service into a reward system weakens Pan-African calls for accountable leadership and credible democracy. It undermines the credibility of African leadership as a whole. It sends a message that on this continent, if you are connected enough, if you are loyal enough, and if you serve power well enough, you will be protected no matter what your record looks like. There is a sober but firm truth here. This list is not just about who becomes ambassador. It's about what kind of country Nigeria is becoming, and whether Nigerians at home and in the diaspora are willing to accept this as the new normal. The confirmation process is only beginning. These ambassadors will be screened. They will be posted to capitals and multilateral bodies across the world. They will represent Nigeria in places where Nigeria's credibility is already damaged, and Nigerians will be watching. They will be measuring how these choices impact the country's standing. Because if Nigeria now is for sale to the highest bidder and the most loyal servant, then documenting who holds the key becomes a matter of national survival. Now, if you are watched to this point, this is Frontline Africa. This is where we talk about geopolitics from Africa's own point of view. And in today's episode, in this particular episode, It's about Nigeria's image to the world. These people are not just going to occupy a regular political office. They are representing the entire Nigeria, including myself, to the world. I am concerned personally, and I am offended. And this is the brutal reality about this administration. Everything appears to be about politics. Everything appears to be about winning the next election. And everything appears to be about winning an argument. No country can succeed when it is governed by this kind of ideology. And this is the major problem about this current Nigeria. I hate it when everything is about winning the next election. Everything should not be about politics. We know it is important to win the next election, but giving us an ambassador that will portray Nigeria's image especially at this troubling time, it is very important that the Senate does not approve certain names. But knowing the kind of Senate we have, all of them will be approved. They will all take a bow and be sent out there to represent all of us around the world. And the future is looking very bleak if this is the brutal reality we are all forced to accept in Nigeria of today. Another point I want to note here is this. Nigeria has a big diplomatic vacuum in the US, in the UK, and even in the West. Because when Donald Trump threatened Nigeria with military action, and when he designated Nigeria as a country of particular concern, do you know that as I speak to you right now, Nigeria does not have any ambassador to represent Nigeria's image? And when eventually the president decided to send people to the US to do some diplomacy work for Nigeria, guess who the president sent? He sent the NSA, the police, a policeman like the head of the police IG. Tell me, what does a policeman know about diplomacy? What does a policeman know about international diplomacy? I don't understand certain things that happens in my country. A policeman has no business with diplomacy. The president sent him to go and meet representative in the US to talk about the threat of Donald Trump and the designation of Nigeria as a country of particular concern. How does a policeman become a diplomat? I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. Go to the comment section and tell us if it makes sense to you. Tell us if this list makes sense to you as a Nigerian or as an African that is interested in what is happening inside Nigeria. Now, if you want to continue to see my content, maybe consider to subscribe and turn on those notifications. I am still your host, Ezekiel Enejeta, and I will see you in the next one. It's a bye-bye for now.